The most expensive tax you pay isn't the financial one. It's the wisdom tax. It's the years spent learning lessons that could have been understood in minutes. Most people spend decades stumbling over patterns that some realize much earlier. Like someone trying to put together a jigsaw puzzle without ever looking at the picture on the box, we keep adding up the attempts until one day something fits. And then comes that inevitable thought. Why didn't I notice this before? This feeling is common because life, despite seeming chaotic, follows patterns that repeat themselves with impressive frequency. The problem is that these patterns only reveal themselves to those who are attentive and willing to question the obvious. Often, what is lacking is not effort, but the right kind of knowledge applied at the right time. Think about how many situations in your life could have turned out differently if you had understood something fundamental a little earlier. Like that relationship that ended badly because you didn't know how to communicate your needs, or the job you took out of fear and which left you exhausted for years. We've all been there. The point is that although it may seem that some people have an instruction manual, nobody is born with one. The difference is that some learn to read the signs of the game faster than others. Not because they're smarter, but because they were exposed to the right ideas at the right time, or because they were ready to see them. Interestingly, these ideas are not secret. They are everywhere, in books, conversations, mistakes made by other people. But they remain invisible because our mind filters everything through mental models that we accept as true without even realizing it. It's like using an old map to navigate a city that has already changed completely. These mental models shape what we perceive as possible, and therefore end up guiding decisions, behaviors, and even emotions. Two people can look at the same situation and have completely opposite reactions, not because they are different, but because they operate with different internal maps. For example, many people believe that time is short and rush to fit more tasks into their day. But what if the problem isn't a lack of time, but the way you relate to it? Instead of trying to beat the clock, perhaps the real gain lies in slowing down, prioritizing, and understanding that presence is worth more than productivity. This kind of insight doesn't require degrees or years of study. It requires a willingness to observe your own patterns and the courage to update them. Because, in the end, the mental models you don't review end up deciding your life for you. These small updates in the way we think have the power to completely transform the way we face challenges. But there is a price that few are willing to pay: deliberate discomfort. Changing your mental structure requires more than understanding a new idea. It requires getting used to the friction of breaking old habits, resisting constant distraction, and relearning to focus. And this is precisely where one of today's greatest resources comes in: attention. In a world where everything competes for it, the ability to stay focused has become a silent superpower. Curiously, we've been taught to manage time, but not attention. It's like being handed a leaky bucket and told to fetch more water instead of plugging the leaks. The truth is that managing attention matters infinitely more than managing time. We all have the same 24 hours, but what varies is what we manage to accomplish with them. And that depends on the quality of our focus. Those who live scattered, jumping between notifications, tasks, and random stimuli, spend the day exhausted, but accomplish little. Those who cultivate selective focus, on the other hand, manage to turn a few hours of concentration into significant results. This leads us to a counterintuitive idea. Selective ignoring is an essential skill. In a world saturated with data and opinions, the real challenge is not having access to information, but knowing what to ignore. We keep acting as if more content automatically means better choices, when in fact we are drowning our discernment. It's like trying to quench your thirst by drinking from a fire hose. What's missing is not more knowledge, but the space to digest and apply what we already know. Value lies in practical wisdom, not in the amount of data accumulated. And this requires a radical shift, out of passive consumption mode and into active integration mode. It's the difference between adding ingredients and actually preparing a meal. To do this, you need to review the way you organize your day. How many times have you found yourself reading, listening to, or watching something inspiring, only to forget all about it the next day because you haven't made time to reflect or apply it? Without that break to process, everything becomes noise. Now imagine if you treated your attention like you treat your most valuable money, with strategy, planning, and clear boundaries. You wouldn't let just anyone into your house to mess things up. Why would you let them into your mind? The way we use attention shapes what we think, how we feel, and even who we become. So looking after it with intention is more than a productivity tip. It's a question of identity. Much of our life is shaped by the decisions we make. But curiously, almost no one learns to make good decisions consciously. We are taught to solve complex equations, but not to solve personal dilemmas. We know historical dates, but not how to choose a career path clearly. This neglect pushes us towards impulsive decisions based on anxiety, external expectations, or outdated models. However, a few simple principles can completely transform this dynamic. One of them is time. Creating a small gap between impulse and action can make all the difference. Waiting 72 hours before deciding something important, for example, makes room for wisdom to enter, and not just haste to speak up. Another essential principle is to think beyond the immediate consequence. Many people make the mistake of considering only the now, without asking themselves what comes next. And after that, what? This is the logic of second-order thinking. For example, taking a job just because the salary is high may seem like a good immediate decision. But what about the long term? Will you be growing? Feeling fulfilled? The same goes for relationships, investments, or habits. The accumulated consequences of a poorly thought-out choice often cost more than the discomfort of reflecting a little more. A third powerful principle is to invert the logic of the question. Instead of asking, "How do I get what I want?" ask, "What's stopping me from getting it?" This reversal reveals real obstacles, not theoretical paths. For example, instead of looking for strategies to be more productive, perhaps the real problem lies in a pattern of procrastination associated with fear of failure. Resolving this is much more effective than adding new techniques to the list. It's curious how easy it is for us to question small decisions, such as a $20 purchase, but we rarely question beliefs that we've been carrying around for years. And it is precisely these beliefs that act as silent filters, limiting our choices. There's no point in looking for the perfect solution if the problem is poorly formulated. It's like trying to cure a chronic headache by changing your medication when the source of the pain is a vision problem. The effort isn't wrong, it's misdirected. And that brings us to the chasm that separates knowing from doing, the so-called implementation gap. We live in an age where knowledge is just a click away, but real transformation remains scarce. Because while knowledge is celebrated, doing is underestimated. Dozens of books are read, but what has been learned is rarely applied consistently. Applying what you know requires more than will. It requires structure. Most people try to implement changes based on willpower alone, which works like pushing a car uphill. It's possible, but unsustainable. When you understand that knowledge only becomes power when it is incorporated, you realize that small, consistent actions have more impact than large, sporadic changes. It's not about occasional heroism, but daily constancy. A simple habit done every day, such as 5 minutes of writing or meditation, transforms more than an entire weekend of concentrated effort. The difference lies in the repetition, the rhythm, not the intensity. Even though we know what needs to be done, many people still find themselves stuck, accumulating knowledge without being able to put it into practice. This is because we have been conditioned to overvalue information and underestimate the mechanisms that make change possible. It's not for lack of content or intention. It's the surrounding environment that often doesn't offer support. Most people try to use willpower to change their lives, but that's like trying to cross the desert carrying all the water on your back. Willpower works best as a starter button, useful for getting started, but weak for sustaining. The secret lies in designing systems and environments that make the desired behavior easier, almost inevitable. Think about how much easier it is to eat healthily when your fridge is already full of washed and ready fruit, than when you have to prepare everything on the spur of the moment. Or how much easier it is to focus on work when your cell phone is away and notifications are turned off. These are examples of environment design, a simple but incredibly effective concept. Creating a system around you that favors the habits you want to cultivate reduces friction and decreases dependence on willpower. And that goes for everything: productivity, finances, health, relationships. Those who build smart environments don't need to be more disciplined, just more strategic. Often, what we call a lack of motivation is actually a poorly structured environment that constantly pushes us in the opposite direction to what we want. It's like trying to swim against the current every day. But what if you could adjust the direction of the water? Systems work like that current, quiet, consistent, and decisive. Most importantly, well-designed systems make goals a natural consequence, not a constant effort. Instead of aiming to lose weight, for example, you live in an environment that automatically favors healthy choices. In this scenario, the objective ceases to be a distant goal and becomes the inevitable result of a lifestyle. This also changes the way we relate to goals. Instead of seeing them as something to be achieved with effort, we see them as a consequence of a well-executed process. The focus is no longer on the destination, but on the path. The daily repetition, the small adjustments, the invisible rituals that shape our day without us realizing it. That's why, deep down, the people who transform their lives the most are not those who make big New Year's promises, but those who create systems that require fewer decisions and more consistency. In this way, change doesn't depend on the mood, the weather, or the motivation of the day. It just happens, as part of the natural flow of a well-designed life. We are often surprised when our willpower fails, as if it were reasonable to expect it to work infallibly in every context. But that's like being surprised by gravity every time something falls. The mistake lies in believing that successful people are more disciplined by nature, when in fact they have built systems that make the desired path easier to follow. They don't rely on discipline to resist temptations or maintain positive habits. They rely on structures, routines, and environments that make it easy to do the right thing, even on bad days. The difference lies in invisible planning, not brute force. This brings us to an even more profound change of perspective, replacing the focus on goals with a focus on systems. Goals serve as direction, but it's systems that produce concrete results. Someone may want to write a book, but if there isn't a system with defined timetables, a supportive environment, and clarity of process, that goal will get lost in the routine. A system is what allows you to move forward even when motivation is lacking. It's like growing a plant. You don't focus on forcing it to grow. You create the ideal conditions: light, water, good soil, and growth happens as a result. The same goes for any area of life. When you structure your days to support what you want to be, the result stops being a sporadic effort and becomes a natural reflex. And these systems don't work in isolation. They operate within an even more influential ecosystem: our relationships. Most interpersonal problems stem from an almost invisible but devastating pattern: uncommunicated expectations. We expect others to act according to our own silent rules, rules that have often never been spoken out loud. This leads to frustration, resentment, and recurring conflicts. How many times has a simple household chore turned into a fight? And not because of the task itself, but because of everything behind it: a sense of disrespect, overload, lack of recognition. Small gestures become symbols of great unvoiced emotions. Understanding this changes the way we deal with people. Instead of reacting to the surface, we start to see what's behind it. Conversations stop being disputes about facts and become spaces to accommodate real emotional needs. And in the process, we realize something even more powerful. Relationships are not only shaped by what we do, but mainly by who we become. The quality of our bonds is directly influenced by the way we treat, understand, and position ourselves. When we assume a more coherent, empathetic, and honest identity, our whole environment begins to change. And that includes the choice of people we live with. You may have heard that we are the average of the 5 people we hang out with the most. But the influence goes beyond that. Our circle shapes not only what we think, but even what we feel is possible. We are constantly absorbing the emotional, linguistic, and behavioral patterns of those around us. That's why surrounding yourself with people who uplift, challenge, and inspire isn't a luxury. It's a strategic necessity for any kind of lasting transformation. It's curious how much more we trust the opinion of strangers in online reviews than our own intuition about people. This kind of automatic pattern reveals how much we follow social scripts without realizing it. accepting behaviors, goals, and beliefs as if they were personal choices, when in fact they are inherited scripts. The most profound change happens when we realize that we are not our thoughts. We are the consciousness that observes those thoughts. And from this place of presence, we can stop being victims of our mental patterns and start redesigning them with intention. Everything we've discussed so far connects as parts of the same system. The mental models we adopt determine what we perceive as possible. The way we manage our attention defines what information feeds these models. The decisions we make reflect these filters, and the way we implement what we learn turns our ideas into action. The systems we create underpin these changes, while our relationships provide the environment in which all this manifests itself. Our approach to success directs the trajectory, and our identity is the foundation that supports or sabotages everything. When these pieces align, what is formed is not just knowledge, it's wisdom. Not the passive wisdom of someone who knows a lot, but the embodied wisdom that transforms presence into clarity and action into direction. That's why the real challenge lies not in learning more, but in needing less. When you understand yourself deeply, everything around you becomes simpler, noise decreases, decisions become lighter, and life becomes clearer. The most important thing now is not to let this content die as curiosity. Choose an idea that struck a chord and apply it, because without action, even the best wisdom becomes just another piece of archived information. And in 30 years' time, you'll look back and ask yourself, what do I wish I'd understood earlier? What would be the turning point? Start with it. Because the wisdom is already in you. What's missing is often just permission to live differently. If this message has helped you see something new, please like the video here and subscribe to the channel. This will help this content reach more people who may be stuck in the same patterns you've just broken. And if you feel that this work deserves to continue, consider leaving a support of any amount. Your help strengthens this space for reflection and allows more people to access content like this, which doesn't sell shortcuts, but offers mirrors.